us use your space, and I guess I should say, if you come over on a Sunday and you think, why is this chair like this? Why is this here? Or something's odd. Sorry, that was probably us. And we do try and look after the space, but we are very grateful for being able to use that, use this space. It's lovely. Also, Josh mentioned that I worship normally at the Anglican Church, and so I should say thank you too, because we love Jack. I'm sorry we stole him, but we love him and we'd like to keep him. It's been great having Jack with us, and it's lovely too. We've just had state youth games, of course, and having some of the youth groups working together was really nice too. I got the little updates about Josh from my own son, Kalen, who was in Josh's car a few times, been driven around. So the spies are everywhere, but it's lovely to share and to be able to do things together like that. So thank you for the use of the church space. Thank you for sharing Jack with us, and thank you for the chance to be here this morning. Thank you for that beautiful reading of the passage from Ezekiel. I'm going to start in that passage, but then we're going to sort of move on from there a little bit. And I want to ask you a question that I was quite pleased. It's a question that resonates very closely with the question we were asked as we prepared for communion. And also, I should preface this by saying this is a message of hope and encouragement. So we might start in a fairly dark place, but we're moving towards hope by the end. And the question I have for you is this: have you ever found yourself in the midst of something collapsing all around you? And in that space, have you ever wondered, what is God's response to this? Now, we'll think a bit more about that question as we go along, but let me introduce you first to Ezekiel and give some context. Ezekiel lived out his prophetic career. Of course, he's one of the Old Testament prophets, and he lived out his prophetic career among the community of exiled Judeans in Babylon. He lived most of his life in exile in Babylon. If you like the background to that, it's around 593 BC, 4 years into the exile of King Jehoiakim, who'd been deported to Babylon along with the leaders of Israel for his rebellion against Nebuchadnezzar. And then during Ezekiel's time in exile, Zedekiah, the puppet king installed by Nebuchadnezzar, rebels and precipitates the siege and fall of Jerusalem. 18 months later, to Babylonians' army in 586 BC. If you didn't follow all of that, don't worry. The key thing you need to know is that at the opening of the book of Ezekiel, the city of Jerusalem is still intact, the temple is still standing, but then by 586 BC, by partway through, the Babylonians have returned. Jerusalem is destroyed, the temple is destroyed, the city is destroyed, and the people are taken captive in exile, those that survived. A pretty grim situation. A situation where it seems like everything is collapsing and all is lost. As I was reading through Ezekiel, I thought, gee, imagine reading Ezekiel as a Ukrainian citizen right now. That really brought it home to me. Ezekiel knew all about collapse and ruin. He lived it. His home, his family, his nation all collapsed. And in the midst of that collapse, in the midst of exile, God shows him a vision. Now, it's a strange vision. We've just heard it. It's a strange vision, but it's one that's actually found its way into popular culture. I want you to think Pirates of the Caribbean, think Aragorn leading the army of the dead in Lord of the Rings, if that's your thing, or perhaps for some of you, think about the character called Dry Bones in Mario Kart. It's all drawn from that same kind of image. Ezekiel sees a large expanse, a valley. Now, this was truly Death Valley. The floor of the valley is so dense with human bones that it can only be described as being full of bones. And Ezekiel sees them. He sees just how many there are in this open valley. What a grim sight. If God ever shows me a vision, I hope it's something a little more cheerful than that. What a horrible sight. And we need to remember too that the people represented by these bones were not just dead. They were disgraced. And see, in the thinking of ancient Israel and in most of the ancient Near East, an unburied corpse with exposed remains was a shocking disgrace to the dead. These bones had been denied a proper burial. So this was a vision not just of death, but of death and disgrace. Now, some commentators suggest that this vision may have been prompted by Ezekiel's actual memories of seeing the Israelite dead strewn outside Jerusalem, scattered along the desert road as they were dragged together into exile. What a horrible, horrible vision. And then God asks Ezekiel what can only be described as a loaded question. Now, as a teacher, I know what it's like to ask a question and put a student on the spot. I'm not sure that I'd want God to ask me a pointed question like this. Looking at this sort of death valley, God says to Ezekiel, "Son of man, can these bones live?" Now, poor old Ezekiel, the obvious answer is no, of course not. They're bones, they're scattered, desecrated, lifeless. Of course they can't live. But it's God asking me the question. So I feel like maybe the answer is yes, but I don't see how that can possibly be the case. So Ezekiel's smart. He says, well, only you can know the answer to that question, God. And God turns it around again and says, okay, Ezekiel, tell the bones to get up. Great, it's back on him. All right, so he does. He tells the bones to get up. And they do. And then what follows next in the reading is this great blow-by-blow description of these scattered dry bones coming together. It described there was a noise, a rattling sound, the bones come together, bone to bone. I looked and tendons and flesh appeared on them. I hope no one's squeamish. And skin covered them. I almost imagine this will test your classical music knowledge, but if you're familiar with Saint-Saëns' Danse Macabre, I always imagine that's the music playing, or perhaps just something from Fantasia. There's a few scenes in Fantasia that I'm sure it has that background music to it. So these bones come to life, or at least they come together and they become enfleshed. But there was no breath in them. They looked alive, but they didn't breathe. Now we've got a bunch of corpses, fully fleshed, no longer just bones, but still lifeless. So Ezekiel's got that far. And then God breathes his breath into them and they come to life, rising to their feet like a vast army. Suddenly the vision is transformed. Now, just in case Ezekiel has missed the point, subtle as it was, God explains the meaning of the vision. He says, and you heard this later in the reading, then he said to me, Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. They say, our bones are dried up and our hope is gone. We are cut off. Therefore prophesy and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. I will bring you back to the land of Israel. Then you, my people, will know that I am the Lord when I open your graves and bring you up from them. I will put my spirit in you and you will live, and I will settle you in your own land. Then you will know that I, the Lord, have spoken, and I have done it, declares the Lord. Can these bones come back to life? After years of exile in Babylon, Jerusalem in ruins, the temple destroyed, can these bones live? And this is God's response. I, the Lord, will put breath in you, and once again you will live. I will wrap you with muscles and skin and breathe life into you, and then you will know that I am the Lord. Can these bones live? It's a question that we might find ourselves asking. It brings us back to that question we started with. Have you ever found yourself in a position where it seems that all is lost, all has collapsed around you, everything is hopeless? Now, maybe it was a personal moment. Maybe it's one of those moments where you find yourself struggling with a failure that seems irredeemable. You've made a mistake and you see no way out of it. Perhaps it's in the midst of a relationship breakdown with little hope of reconciliation. Perhaps you're looking around at the world in the face of crumbling institutions, failing political and social structures. Or perhaps it's simply in those moments of weariness when we feel like we have nothing more to give. We hear a lot about the concerns for the mental health of particularly our young people, but society in general, the loss of hope. We hear a lot about the rapid change in society. Things, institutions that we trust collapse. Life changes so fast. Things like pandemics throw us into a spin. So many of us at some point find ourselves feeling like everything's collapsing around us, and we wonder, can these bones come back to life? Is there any hope for our society? Is there any hope for our environment? Is there any hope for the situation I'm in? Is there any hope for this relationship? Is there any hope for me? Can these dry bones live? What's God's answer to us when all seems lost and we cry out, what hope is there now? Now, at this point, let's turn and find our hope. And in doing so, let me introduce you to Randall Champion. Randall's the guy in the bed. On the 17th of July 1967, electrical linesman Randall Champion almost lost his life. While performing routine maintenance on power lines in Jacksonville, Florida, Champion accidentally came into contact with a low voltage line at the top of the pole. Now, despite being a low voltage line, it still had quite an effect on him. Thrown back unconscious, he hung upside down, his safety harness preventing him from falling any further, and he stopped breathing. His good friend and co-worker, J.D. Thompson, who you can see there leaning over the bed, rushed to Champion's aid, and while unable to administer CPR, was able to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation until Champion began to breathe again. And Thompson then unclipped his friend, carried him over his shoulder to the ground, where they continued to work on him. Champion was moderately revived by the time paramedics arrived and eventually made a full recovery. Lived another 35 years, dying in 2002 at the age of 64. And this, in fact, is a photo of them sometime, years after that event, and Champion's there for a completely unrelated medical issue. But you'll see there's a third person in that photo. This remarkable moment, this remarkable rescue, was captured in a stunning image by photographer Rocco Morabito, and he's the third person there. And you may have seen this picture. The photo, named The Kiss of Life, won the 1968 Pulitzer Prize for Spot News Photography. The way it came about, Morabito was in the area on a completely unrelated assignment when he looked up and saw Champion dangling from the pole. He called an ambulance first and then grabbed his camera and started taking photos. The resulting image is a powerful one. As one journalist describes it, there's an eerie elegance to the photo. Two men in mid-air posed like dancers. One hangs upside down with his arms over his head. The other cradles him and presses their faces together. The so-called Kiss of Life photo resonates because of its unsettling beauty. It presents a dramatic and life-saving rescue, high on a utility pole, where life literally hangs in the balance between two men's leather safety straps. An amazing moment captured. But for me, this photo does something more. For me, this photo is an image of the gospel. See, in this image, I'm reminded of a God who took human form only to end up hanging lifeless on a wooden pole. And yet, at the same time, I see him restored by the breath of life. In that moment, God becomes both sacrifice and saviour. Can these bones live? God answers this question for Ezekiel in the same way that J.D. Thompson responded to the sight of his friend Randall's lifeless body, with life-giving breath. In Ezekiel's vision, God animates the dry bones with his breath as a picture of reassurance that the people of Israel, taken captive and displaced from their homeland by the Babylonians, would be restored to a new life. My Spirit will give you breath, and you will live again. I will bring you home, and you will know that I have kept my promise. I, the Lord, have spoken. And then on the cross and in the resurrection, Jesus promises to breathe new life into each of us. So in those moments of despair, when all seems lost and we can't see a way forward, the first thing to know when we ask, where is God in this? Perhaps God is hanging right there with us. God gave himself in human form to suffer. God knows what it is to suffer. God knows what it is to see everything collapsing around and to have to simply put his trust in the Father. And God promises his breath. My Spirit will give you breath and you will live again. I will bring you home and you will know that I have kept my promise. And it's not some abstract and impersonal promise. It's the heartfelt promise of one who sees a friend in dire need and rushes to respond. Where is God when everything seems collapsed, when everything seems to be falling apart? Perhaps God is right there with us, but perhaps God too is the one rushing to our aid, who sees us in need and comes to breathe that life-giving breath. So next time it feels like you're hanging by the safety harness with nothing more to give, do not lose hope, but ask instead for God's breath to revive and restore you. The same God who himself hung from a pole and breathed his last, only to rise again 3 days later. What a beautiful image. I've always resonated with the lyrics of a song by a Christian rock band, Newsboys, although they've drawn their lyrics from a wider history. And I want to leave you with the simple, very simple chorus of their song. The song's called Breathe. And the words of the chorus are like this. And this is a prayer for those moments when we need God's breath. Breathe on me. Breathe, O breath of God. Breathe on me till my heart is new. Breathe on me. Breathe, O breath of life. Breathe on me till I love like you do. Amen. Thank you.